Hello and welcome back to another episode of Real Estate Renovators, the business advisory show for real estate professionals. My name's Chanell and this is Rex.
How are you, Chanell?
I'm good, Rexy. I'm good. It's been a busy couple of weeks in recruitment and broking world, so a million miles an hour, but wouldn't have it any other way.
Fabulous. I'm very excited for today. I wanted to have a representative from this institution or organization on our show for a while, and you know, I think it's a bit of a disconnect. We work with real estate agents day in, day out, and I feel like when I was growing up, and I'm a little bit older than you, there was this gravitation towards the institution, which is the REIV, the Real Estate Institution of Victoria. In Victoria, obviously every state's got their own version of it, but as I've gotten older, I feel like there's a disconnect at the moment between the real estate agents, and especially the younger real estate agents coming up, and the organisation, which is the REIV. And fortunately, we've got the president of the REIV with us today to talk about all things REIV and how we can reconnect again. So would you like to introduce our guest?
It would be my honour to introduce Jacob Caine.
Thanks so much for having me on the program today, guys. And Rex, it's interesting that you'd kick off with that intro in relation to where the REIV sits now in the minds, the psyche of real estate professionals throughout Victoria. And that's a common refrain that we're hearing, right? That there's been a disconnect, that we've lost that kind of core purpose or value even in particularly the younger segment of real estate professionals out there operating now, but also starting to lose relevance to those that have been in the industry for a long time and have known the institute as one thing and see it as something different nowadays. So that's...
What do you think that is? Firstly, thank you so much for taking time out and joining us. I can only imagine how busy you are.
It's my pleasure. It's good to, I love to talk about the Real Estate Institute and where we've been and what we're doing right now and where we're intending to go. So it's my pleasure. Why? Yeah. Why? Yeah, look, there's a number of reasons. You know, the world has moved at a rapid pace in every sphere, technology, socially, environmentally, all of these things are moving at such a pace. And, you know, full transparency, I would say that the Real Estate Institute has failed to keep pace with the rate of change, particularly within our industry. As a result, we're probably, in some respects, perceived as, not necessarily operationally, but perceived as amongst the industry and even the public as being sort of firmly rooted in a bygone era, anachronistic even. So that's a challenge that's sitting before us, is to re-engage, reconnect, and become what we once were to a new generation of real estate professionals.
And I feel like I personally see it from a distance, I suppose, looking at, you know, the Real Estate Institute of Victoria never had a social media kind of active account. Now it does. It has a lot more active involvement in seminars. You can have a different seminar every second day on the REIV, which is, you know, a lot more engagement, a lot more giving back. But I'm not sure that's been received or realized by some of my clients I know, for example. And when you talk about the REIV, if I talked about it 10 years ago, it's like the REIV. Everyone's a member of the REIV.
Yeah.
Now, well, I'm not sure if we're a member of that.
You're absolutely bang on there. And look, there's an enormous job in front of us because, for a select or a smaller segment of the real estate community, they understand that there is enormous resource available already within the Institute. And there are fantastic, modern, best-in-class training and professional development courses available. We host a huge number of events in any given year, but the gap between us and the broader sector and the community, the real estate community, is so wide right now that we've got, one, a comms piece that we really need to address in terms of, you know, re-engaging it and getting in front of people in their face, whether that's through social channels, whether that's direct to direct, like, you know, in person, face-to-face contact. Sometimes it's going to take that to reignite a relationship that's been damaged over maybe years of disappointment in terms of what the Institute's been putting out there, or years of disappointment about a failure to communicate effectively with the broader real estate community. But beyond that, we also need to transform in a lot of different ways to meet this moment, right? Now, one of the key pillars of what we do is advocacy. We have strong relationships with government, and we're there to represent the industry and the best interests of the industry, and by default, everyone who has an interest in property, which to my thinking, and it's certainly the thinking of the executive within the organisation right now and the board of directors, is that our stakeholders are everyone in Victoria, because everyone in Victoria touches property, whether through in a commercial setting or a residential setting, right? Everyone has an exposure. So really what we need to be thinking about when we go into government and advocate for policy changes, or when we make recommendations around strategies and initiatives to improve the housing and commercial real estate ecosystem that we all live in, we have to be thinking about a very broad and disparate group of stakeholders, and that's not easy. Historically, I think we've probably focused more too much internally, looking inwards around what's directly going to have an impact on us, on our members, and potentially negatively impact whether that's their earning capacity or the type of work that they need to do. We need to broaden that lens, particularly to your earlier point around the younger demographic. Those entering the workforce now are more socially minded than any generation ever has been before, right? They care about what an organisation stands for, whether that's from a social perspective, an environmental perspective, governance, ESG, we're talking about that. That needs to be part of the identity of the organisation for us to actually connect with that generation that's entering and the generations.
A lot of hats you're wearing, because you're talking about being an advocate for the whole industry, the real estate industry, as well as being involved in so many aspects and touching everyone's lives in terms of property. How do you manage it?
It's a really good question, and ultimately, whilst we can't be everything to everyone, it's impossible, we can be a number of different things to everyone that we touch, right? Now that might be that for someone out there, they might want us to be the voice of a united industry, a voice of a united sector, out there advocating for all of the people working within this space, and we can be that. For someone else, it might be, I want to come to the REIV to get better at what I do. I want to learn, I want to develop, I want to improve my skills. We can be that for them too. Someone else might just want an award, right, to show that they're already the best at what they do, right? And we can be that too. So we can wear a lot of hats, and we have done historically. We just need to be exceptional at all of those. And being exceptional means being informed by the people that we're doing these things for, the sector, our stakeholders.
You mentioned, Jake, the reason you wanted to become part of the REIV is because you had a bit of a bone to pick with the real estate industry and somewhat of its lack of professionalism. Can you talk us through that?
Yeah, absolutely. Full transparency, I admit to that. I even more than a bone to pick, I had a chip on my shoulder about working in real estate. I'm a second generation real estate. I didn't start in this industry. I transitioned from another industry.
What were you in?
I was an opera singer.
Oh, were you?
Yeah.
I would never have picked that.
There you
Now
go.
that you mention, I can see the voice is very powerful.
No, thank you.
We might need to get a little bit of a
no chance
acapella at the end, I think.
Yeah. So I made that move. That was an industry very much in decline, and I was doing fairly well at the time, but I was looking down the barrel of struggling financially, having to tour a lot to make ends meet, and I had a wife and a new child had arrived, and I was thinking this isn't really viable to keep on it and have the kind of life that I wanted to provide for our children. So made the transition, had the benefit of being the son of an estate agent that ran a business and came into the industry. But I'd always kind of thought...
How was it being the son of a real estate agent? Seeing, your family, your dad, I suppose, not being around on Saturdays, taking phone calls at night. You know, it's a very different industry to most.
That's right, yeah. And look, my dad and I have an incredibly close relationship now, and it's been fostered through working together. He's retired now, but we worked together for 15 years.
Is this at Caine Real Estate?
At Caine Real Estate,
okay.
yeah. So, but when I was a kid, yeah, to your point, Rex, he was not there a lot. Like, he was old school 80s, 90s sales agent, right? Like, just
There was no mobile
gone
phones,
before I got
Yeah.
up, back, you know, after dinner and out Saturdays. There was a time he went, you know, when the market was terrible here, he went to live in Sydney for 6 months and sold real estate in Double Bay.
Oh, wow.
Because better commissions, better opportunities going on up there than where we lived. So yeah, he was absent. You know, we're making up time now, making up ground on that. What was it like? That's where the chip on my shoulder came from, to be perfectly honest, because I saw that. I saw the work, and I also caught whiff, as you do as a kid, of the kind of lack of regard or respect in which he was held. And it's hard to reconcile that, right? Like, you know, you see this person in your life working really hard, incredibly hard, and then you kind of try to translate that into, well, that should, you know, be respect. It should translate into respect for what they were doing. And it was impossible to kind of, you know, avoid hearing about the kind of sometimes even contempt with which real estate agents were held.
Yeah.
And so that's something I've held with me. And to your question, Chantel, it's about when I got into the industry, I had a kind of fire in my belly to see if I could impact change in a positive way. And that's why I got involved with the Real Estate Institute. And I'll be honest, again, it's been a love-hate relationship as long as I've been involved, because I've felt some of the frustrations that you're talking about. I've felt some of the disconnect that you've referenced earlier on, that I know a lot of people out there in the industry have felt too.
And the public perception, we're talking about this, the public perception of the real estate industry as a whole is not positive.
No.
What is the REIV doing to potentially address this or turn this around?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's interesting, you know, the Ethics Institute of Australia does an annual ranking, and we were ranked dead last for 2023. Right, dead last.
Why is this? Why do we think this? I mean, there's a lot of answers to that, but what's the bottom line there? And then, yeah, please tell us how the REIV is also looking to address this.
I'll answer it first. And look, you know, this is not to complain. It's our lot in life, to be perfectly honest. I don't think we're ever going to sit number one, right? Because that's perception. This is a highly emotive business that we're in, right? Whenever a real estate agent comes into the life of someone, it's in the midst of probably a life-changing event, whether that's a birth, a death, a marriage, a breakup, right? This is the impetus to move. For renters, if you're changing right now in the current climate, like, what's their relationship with us? Even the best property manager in the world is going to struggle to be loved by a renter right now, given how tough it is out there for them to get
cost of living,
right. Cost of living, availability of properties. You've seen the queues around the blocks.
Scary.
You know? So that we're at a disadvantage in that respect, because it's highly emotional. Regardless, there's always going to be people that carry some mistrust, some upset, some tension, some anxiety around the transaction, whether that's buying, selling, renting, or investing. Right? It's highly fraught, and we probably need to be better in that space. I think at working as, you know, as psychologists almost to allay those concerns. That's something that certainly we can get better at. But I think we're always going to be in that position where, due to the extreme significance of the transaction where we sit in it, that will be a problem. The other thing is price sensitivity. Of course, like I've touched on it, the more expensive houses get, right?
Want to blame somebody?
The public isn't looking at the government explicitly and saying, you know what, for 30 years you haven't built enough social housing, right, which ultimately underpins the entire housing ecosystem, right? If we had have built social housing since 2000, the year 2000, at the rates we did in the 50s, 60s, 70s and 80s, we wouldn't have a housing crisis right now, right? In the 50s, we built 15,500 social homes per year. Since the 2000s, we've averaged 2,000.
Why is that?
Why? I have a theory.
There's a lot of theories about that.
Look, it's a long bow, right? The Americanisation of Australia, all right? Now, I say this being, I studied in the States. I have a strong affinity and affection for the United States, and they're a very important country in the global context, particularly at the moment. What happens later this year is incredibly important for us. But what they do have is an ingrained, burnt into their psyche, fierce independence, right? And what that translates into is almost a contempt for social supports, right? So it's kind of like if you need help from the state, right, you're slacking off, or you're not good enough, you haven't worked hard enough, right? And that comes from way back in their history where they get that from, but it persists to this day. And what has happened is globalisation, etc., is we have become more American in our view. And in the 50s, we were all like, look out for your mates, we're all in this together. And increasingly, we've adopted an attitude that, do you remember dole bludgers? Remember when there was this, you're probably too young, right?
No, I remember it.
But, people going, bloody dole bludgers, and this attitude.
Kath and Kim, they still talk about it. You're not sure dole bludgers.
But it's almost a contempt for those less fortunate than us, right? And in any society, there's always going to be people less fortunate than you, right? And what does that mean? We're responsible, not the governments. We, as a voting public, haven't demanded of our governments that you build social housing. I sit on a lot of committees and forums and boards right now, and we've got strong, fantastic, productive people that are saying, well, we can't rely on the government, the private sector's got to do it. And I go, no, they don't. That's why we have a government. That's why we pay tax. This is their responsibility.
But even the private sector, with local councils and the red tape they put in front of developers, it makes it so hard. I've been a developer myself. It's such a tough grind at the moment in banks and councils.
No argument.
Just makes it a bit difficult. And that's why an institution like the Real Estate Institute of Victoria can help when people don't realise that you're a voice for all real estate agents, that they should be banding with you so you can give them the voice what they want to be heard on.
Yeah, 100%. And look, to be more effective at doing that, though, we have to be a single voice of a united sector, right? And that's, to the earlier conversation that we're having, we're not there right now. So we need to build back that alliance, right, of everyone in the sector together. And so we can go for united together. Because if we go in, we've got 6,000 members. We represent, from an office perspective, we represent the vast majority of offices within the state,
From an agent's perspective?
Yeah, well, less so, If there's, on BLA, there's 15,000 agents at the moment. We've got 6,000 of them. So there's a big gap there. And we need to have more of us together, because that will have more of an impact when we go in and say, hey, this isn't going to work. You need to do this, which we do, and we have some success with that. No question about that. Right now, we're having conversations with CAV. We're having conversation with the Climate Action Minister. We're having conversations with the other side of the aisle too, because one day they'll be back in power too. So we need to have relationships across the spectrum of the political landscape, and be constantly working towards convincing them that what we have to say is meaningful and is going to result in better outcomes for society. I know I didn't answer your earlier question.
No, that's okay. I know I really want to talk on what strategies you are implementing to refresh the REIV. But can I ask, Jake, we touching on the previous question I asked about the lack of potential professionalism in the real estate industry. Now with changes to barriers of entry, right? When we look at real estate agencies, whether agents, property managers, business owners, it can be one of the highest paying jobs, more than any other profession, law, medicine. with relatively no barrier to entry, but that all changed a couple of years ago where they implemented new mandates to actually getting your agent's representative certificate.
Yep.
I personally believe that's weeded out a lot of people that just got into real estate because they watched one episode of Selling Sunset. Can you talk us through what that actually covers, how the REIV can provide the agent's representative certificate? Because I know it's a little bit longer than most other course providers as well. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we don't take shortcuts there in that respect, and we welcomed the change in certification process. Nowadays, it is much more onerous. There's multiple units. Our delivery method requires, as you say, like a very serious investment of time. There is government funding available too, which mitigates and offsets the cost to the person, but in order to complete it, they actually have to be devoted and dedicated to
Thank
the
goodness.
study.
It used to be 24 hours and, you know, you could get an agent's rep out of a cereal box.
Exactly.
It didn't require anything.
Yeah, 100%.
Online.
Yeah, and the answers were all there online.
That's right. And look, I'm not going to mention names. I'm not going to denigrate our competitors out there, but what we have in place for our Cert 4 program is a very high quality product.
It is.
Right? And it's in line with the real and technical requirements to become accredited to be a real estate agent in Victoria. And I can't say that that's uniform across the entire landscape right now.
It certainly isn't.
Yeah. And there are methods and processes by which people circumvent that, and that should be condemned and weeded out is the crux of it. That said, we're also cognizant that there are some great and reputable providers who are doing what we're doing.
Correct.
Maybe not at the level we would think that we're performing at, but who are doing it at a better price point and who are doing it at a condensed time frame, right? So people can get working sooner and for cheaper. Now, that's something that we're working on right now in terms of being able to offer alternative streams or versions and delivery methods of our certification programs as well. So we've got more work to do there to compete. We used to have the majority of the marketplace now.
Correct.
Of course, you know, like everything, there's more competition for everything, right? So that our dominance in that space has been diminished over recent years, but we have aims to reclaim it, claw it back.
Good, because my concerns are with candidates that we're speaking to. Certain providers are not providing any level of education and doing it.
It's 1 week course.
Well, it's not supposed to be anymore, but some of these providers are, let's just say, I guess, not being... what's the word? They're not doing the right thing, essentially. They're not really running it with integrity.
I think it's fair to label it unethical.
Correct.
I've stopped short of calling it illegal because they find ways within the legislation.
Loopholes. So many loopholes.
But
every state's got different laws, that's why.
But
each other's licenses as well. So.
Exactly, yeah. And there's the recognition of prior learning component, which is which you need, right? Like you need to recognise people's experience and credentials so they don't have to keep rehashing the same things. But by the same token, it's quite exploitable, and they're not good outcomes. They're not good outcomes for the people the companies that these candidates come and work for. They're not good outcomes for the clients they get exposed to, and
the industry.
So that the industry, exactly.
The industry as a whole, like if someone's at a 1 week course, they don't know. No. It's such a personal relationship, and as you mentioned earlier, you touch on such big moments in someone's life.
Yeah.
A 1 week course. What education do you have?
Exactly. Exactly. And you're talking about the most expensive thing most of us will ever spend money on.
Correct.
You know, like millions of dollars.
And it's relatively zero barrier to entry. It's concerning.
Very concerning, yeah. And I mean, to revisit the question that you asked earlier, like what are we doing about that? To Rex's earlier point, again, we keep revisiting the past. We have to acknowledge the past, right?
Of
course. But we shouldn't be only informed by the past. But the Real Estate Institute used to be an emblem of quality.
Correct.
Right? Like that was the difference.
And trust.
And trust, yeah.
Vendors wanted the REIV on the authority before they signed it.
Yeah.
Now, if no one uses the REIV authority.
Do you know what? You'd be surprised. People still say, I had someone say to me the other day, I had a vendor wouldn't sign the authority because there wasn't an REIV insignia on it. And I said, this agent said to me as well, didn't know what REIV was, but knew that it shouldn't be there. So we still do have that.
It's probably an older vendor who's used to that mentality, which
totally
was this trust piece.
Yeah.
That I don't know if it's there as much anymore.
I think it's absolutely accurate to say that's been diminished. But it used to mean something, right?
Yes.
And not just figuratively, not just symbolically. It meant something, right? That you weren't going to get shoddy practice, that you weren't going to get an underqualified, inexperienced operator. And that's where we need to get back to.
It meant something as well, Jake, to the agency as well. Where did they get their agent's representative certificate? They got it from the REIV. Doesn't get asked anymore. They got the agent's rep. Yep, cool. Yep, that's fine, Chanell. It used to hold weight. They got their agent's representative through the REIV, and that held weight. And I feel like that's sort of been diminished over the last few years, potentially due to obviously like a crisis in terms of finding employees. People just need people on seats, particularly after the pandemic. We went through a massive crisis in staff shortages.
Yep.
But I wanted to hold weight again because it actually qualifies people to work in the industry and gives them the fundamentals of what a good and ethical agent is. And I feel like that is lacking massively in our industry, and it's what's causing people to have such a poor, you know,
the issue is not from the REIV. I think the issue is from business owners.
Oh, correct.
Business owners need to hire based on the REIV.
There's so many factors that come into it, right?
If it starts with the business owner, if you care about your own business, you should be hiring someone qualified and properly
But how
trained.
does the candidate know that the REIV is the most accredited course? Other than hearing it from a recruiter, they might be like, well, then maybe the recruiter's got a kickback if they refer me. The agent's rep course is X amount, but I can go to Old Mate down the road for a week and do it for $400. What do you think they're going to do? There needs to be more education about it.
You're both right. You know, two things can be right at the same time,
Yeah.
right? You know, we've got a responsibility. Practitioners, business owners have a responsibility. What can we do to make that better? There's a number of things that we're working on with government right now in terms of mandatory CPD is part of it. I know that comes after the case, but it's also to your earlier point around like barriers to entry, barriers to remaining in the industry. Like most other industries have mandatory CPD requirements, right? And that is to recognise the fact that things aren't stagnant. They don't stay the same, and you have to keep developing, you have to keep improving. But we're also working on interim credentialing, right? Essentially, let's call it an apprenticeship, right? So people can come in and they can start, they can get a couple of units under their belt, and they can go then and work within an agency within parameters, right?
Yeah.
And then incrementally, they will be able to do more within the agency as they complete the units, right? There'll be a requirement that their grades are high, that they're doing the work and being completed in a timely manner. That will open up the pathway for those people that are interested that are making that. They're at the decision tree and they go, well, this one will get me done in a week. It's going to cost me $400 and I can start working, right? You know, because money's tight. You know, not a lot of people really have the capacity right now to be sitting around not working for months on end, or have the time to work all day during the daytime and energy and then go and try and complete another certification on the side. So that will help facilitate that and make that decision a bit easier. Then we have a huge amount of work into reputationally, engagement, communication, marketing, etc. We're marketing on 3AW right now for our agents rep equivalent course. What do you guys reckon? Are we marketing in the right place?
I was going to say, I don't know anyone that listens. Any junior person that's listening to 3AW,
That's
Instagram,
right.
TikTok, that's where you want to be doing it.
That just shows your membership kind of at the moment. I think your membership might be an older generation that listens to 3AW. The younger generation probably doesn't.
A membership are already working in there. You know,
exactly.
Like, so you
why
know,
would you
yeah.
want to target them?
I agree.
But is it a branding piece for them as well?
Part of it's, you know, like that's not to denigrate the marketing department. That strategically, like they want the brand perception, the brand equity to, you know, stay where it is amongst certain demographics. It helps REIV agents with demographics that are buying and selling property. So a presence on channels like 3RW is important in that respect. But if we're talking about losing ground to the competitors, we should be on other channels, right? We should be going to the people that we need, to bring them into the fold and making the case for why they should be with us. So there's, again, heaps of work that we need to do and are in the process of doing now to address that and make sure that the people coming into the industry, as many of them are coming through us as possible, because that translates into, ethical,
Correct.
educational and practice standards
Yeah.
that are, again, I can't generalise, but are more likely to be absent from those coming through the cornflake packet credential.
I couldn't agree more. Before we finish, sorry, Rex, you go.
I was going to talk about the connection between the REIV and the large. I mean, franchising is such a large part in real estate. It's one of the biggest franchise sectors, I suppose.
Yep.
What's the connection between the REIV and franchise groups? Because prior to this filming, we had one of the franchise CEOs here, and he was like, I did, involved with the REIV, and that's the second largest franchise group in Australia.
Yep.
And I feel like that part is missing now too, because the connection between the franchise groups and the REIV could open up the membership to all their franchisees and their offices.
I agree with you 100%. Yeah. We look, this is another of our failings. We have skewed towards, I'll take a step back, right? Like, Melbourne remains, compared to a lot of the rest of the country, more independent, right, in terms of agency practice. Like, we have more smaller brands, but like everywhere else, like every other industry, we are consolidating. We are corporatising, which is a good thing, certainly the corporatisation, because it produces better practices, better standards, better working environments, better conditions for employees, and better outcomes for the people that we deal with, our clients, whether that's a renter, a seller, a purchaser. But the Real Estate Institute has missed the opportunity to, again, move with the times and cultivate and grow their relationships with these groups as they've emerged, whether that's Ray White, whether that's Harcourts, whether that's Barry Plant, Nelson Alexander, Jellis Craig. Now, they're not all franchise groups, they're structures, but they are now big businesses, right? And what those big businesses have done is gone, we're not getting what we need from Real Estate Institute. We'll develop it in-house. So they've got their training academies, they've got their advocacy departments, they've got their tech, they've got their events, right?
That's very true.
And they go, well, look at Ray White, 1,100 offices across, Australasia and APAC, right? Like, look at our events, they're incredible. Why would be involved? And that's Ray White is a good supporter of the Real Estate Institute, as is Barry Plant, Nelson Alexander, right? They've stuck with us, even though we failed to give them what they need from us. So right now we are firmly focused on re-engaging with the big organisations, the big franchise groups, because that's the future of our industry, like it or not, right? Like, I run a small to medium-sized business myself, and I know the clock's ticking for me, right?
Big office is just getting bigger.
That's right. And the gap between what I can do and what they can do in terms of all of those, those key metrics, technology, HR, training, social, environmental, right? Like, it's only widening because they have the resource of these big organisations. So the future of the industry is going to look more like it does in other parts of the world and the country, and there's going to be less of the Caine real estates out there, and there's going to be more of the Jellis Craigs, Barry Plants, Ray Whites, etc. Now, we're re-engaging with them because we haven't listened to what they need, right? We might have said, come in and tell us what you need, and then done nothing about it, right? So we are firmly, right now, we had recently, like about a month or so ago, we had 6 of the CEOs in for a round table, got punched up, deservedly. They said, you're not doing this, we've been here 100 times before, I'm sick of this, do something or we're out for good. And that challenge is in front of us, So
I love the accountability and ownership you're taking. I love that you're sitting here and saying, so many mistakes have been made, but we're going to shift that narrative now. What are the things you've done to shift that narrative? What are the changes the REIV have made?
Sure. All right. Well, there's superficial, and I don't mean superficial in a way that they're irrelevant, right? But they're part of the entire transformation that needs to happen. So I can tell you today, because it's not going to air today, but we have just appointed a brand new CEO. First female CEO of the Real Estate Institute.
Wow.
In its history. It's a long and storied history.
I didn't know that.
Kelly Ryan, and she doesn't come from real estate. She doesn't come from an advocacy perspective. She is the immediate former CEO of Netball Australia, ran Marvel Stadium before that, helped set up the Gold Coast Suns up in Queensland. So she brings incredible business acumen. She comes from a culture of high performance, and she's going to bring those skills and that attitude and that approach to the Real Estate Institute. And guess what? We're in a high performance industry, aren't we? Yeah.
Fantastic.
So the institute should operate like a high performance organisation.
Such a different change to your previous, not the current interim CEO, but the previous CEOs that you've had.
Yeah. Look, we've had guys, obviously, for a long time. Nothing wrong with that, but the times are changing, and we've had in recent years
more senior people too.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It's from an older demographic, because we've as boards and an organisation, we've looked for experience in advocacy, right, which is one of our core pillars of what we do for the real estate community, and that's absolutely critically important. But we also, in the process, have needed to innovate. We've needed to change, evolve as an organisation, and a preoccupation with advocacy, which has been effective at times, less effective at other times. It all depends on you cut through with who's in charge at any given moment. Will often determine how successful you are. But it's time for a change, and that's part of it. We just sold our headquarters. We've been there since the 80s, so we're moving into a brand new building. We're spending a fortune on making it absolutely state of the art in terms of what the experience for people coming in.
So no longer in Camberwell?
It's no longer in Camberwell. We've moved to Abbotsford, just near Victoria Gardens there. Got a building. We're going to have studios and features like this for recording video content, audiovisual, etc. We're going to have fantastic facilities that members can use. We can hold events in the studios, in the premises, and even more so than that. Like, I don't know if you guys have been to the Real Estate Institute anytime recently, but
years ago.
It's kind of like taking a step back in time.
Yeah, I remember it.
Right? And that it's served us so well, these headquarters. Don't get me wrong, right? And due to the smart decisions of my predecessors, as a result, we've been able to sell this building and secure the future of the Real Estate Institute financially, right? Because they made some really good, thankfully, property people made a good property decision, But the experience for a new person, to your point, like walking through the door, you're a new entrant to the industry, a 25-year-old, right, who's only ever seen Selling Sunset. And you're like, whoa, what have I just walked into, right? Like, that experience is important.
It's not going to be Hogwarts anymore. It's going to be slightly different.
Exactly. Yeah. Bang on. So, brand new building. Within 5 to 6 weeks, we'll launch a brand new website. And this is a long time coming. We've invested a huge amount into it. And what's really important about our website too is it is a medium by which our members connect with their development and the organisation, right? So there's a back end to this system which we're going to gamify the experience of being a member, right? So people can accumulate points by doing CPD, by attending events. They can get free stuff as a result of participating more, of participating in feedback, right? We need to get better at having this bi-directional communication stream where people are coming and saying, you're not doing this right, or do this, why don't you try this? So that's a key part in that sort of superficial layer as well. And this sounds boring, but it's actually vital to rejuvenating the organisation. That's constitutional reform. We've got a constitution that is very archaic and it constrains the decision-making powers of the organisation, the board and the executive, right? Because it vests power in a disproportionate and archaic way, And no modern organisation is run like that anymore. So in order to be a modern organisation, we need a modern constitution. And within the next sort of 4 or 5 months, we'll take a new constitution to the membership and vote. And I'm confident that we'll get through a constitution fit for purpose.
75% vote, special resolution?
Special majority, yes. Yeah. So 75%. The previous board took some similar type amendments to the membership. I think it must be 6 years ago. I'm close, if not accurate, 74.97%. We didn't have online digital voting at the time, so it was only the people in the room who held proxies.
Yeah.
Right. So every sort of constitutional reform we've attempted since then has been passed, and we're confident we'll get this through because one, we're consulting with the membership about along the process, and two, the case for making the change it's a no-brainer. It's self-evident that it will benefit the organisation and mean that it can operate in a modern business environment moving forward.
Wow, so many changes. I think what we need to do, Jake, is get you back on in another 6 months, 6 to 12 months, and we really keep our finger on the pulse with all the changes that are happening. Maybe not even 12, interim, because there's so much happening, and it's such a refreshing, nice change to see the REIV reinvent itself. And really grateful for you to be a part of the REIV.
And the sacrifices
and
you
also,
make for the industry.
yeah,
Like you're putting your own business and life aside and sacrificing your time, not just to be here with us, but for it.
And you can feel the passion and the energy that you have. That chip on your shoulder is really...
It's a ginormous chip.
Yeah, let's end the episode with a bit of a cappella. What do you reckon, Rex? We've got to hear it.
Happening. I'm
gotta
retired.
hear it.
I barely slept last night. No. You don't want to hear it.
Oh, that was a bit of
Go on YouTube.
Done. Well, we will link that below. But Jake, thank you so incredibly much. If our producer wasn't telling me to wrap it up behind the scenes, I think we could continue this conversation on for another hour. But obviously, people that are watching, keep updated with the REIV.
Get
any new
connected again,
members.
engaged again, because
Yeah.
that's your voice. And
Yeah, watch this space.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Thank you so much again, Jake.
You're very welcome.
And
Thanks
thank
for
you
having
for
me.
another episode of Real Estate Renovators.